New York City, May 1967. The 55th Street Playhouse. Bob Dylan sits in a darkened theater watching Don't Look Back, D.A. Pennebaker's documentary about Dylan's 1965 tour of England. Dylan has not approved the final cut. He has not seen the completed film. Pennebaker shot hundreds of hours. Dylan assumed he would have input on what was used. He does not. The film is being released without his consent. Dylan watches himself on screen. The footage shows him confronting a journalist from Time magazine, mocking reporters, arguing with Donovan, talking to Joan Baez. Some of it is accurate. Some of it is taken out of context. All of it is now permanent. Dylan cannot change it. The narrative is fixed. After the screening, someone asks Dylan what he thinks. Dylan, it's not me. The person is confused. It is Dylan on screen, literally Dylan. Dylan clarifies, that's me, but it's not the truth. It's Pennebaker's version of me. It's not what happened. It's what he thought happened. The person asks if Dylan will try to stop the film's release. Dylan, how? It's already done. Once it's out there, you can't take it back. Don't Look Back premieres publicly in September 1967. Reviews describe Dylan as arrogant, confrontational, and deliberately difficult. Dylan does not dispute these characterizations publicly. In private, he tells a friend, "They filmed me for weeks. They could have shown anything. They chose to show me being an asshole. That's the story they wanted to tell." The friend asks if Dylan was being an asshole. Dylan, sometimes, but I was also being other things. They didn't show those things. The documentary becomes the definitive document of Dylan in 1965. People who are not there believe they understand what happened because they saw the film. Dylan realizes he has lost control of the narrative. What is documented becomes reality. What is not documented does not exist. In March 1968, Dylan gives one of his first interviews after his motorcycle accident. John Cohen and Happy Traum from Sing Out magazine visit him in Woodstock. They ask about the documentary. Dylan, I don't watch it. I don't like seeing myself like that. Cohen, but it's a valuable historical record. Dylan, it's Pennebaker's record. It's not mine. Traum, do you think it's inaccurate? Dylan, I think it's incomplete. You can make anyone look like anything if you choose the right footage. But the damage is done. Don't Look Back establishes a version of Bob Dylan that Dylan cannot control. The film is shown at universities, studied in film classes, analyzed by critics. The Bob Dylan in the film, sharp, dismissive, enigmatic, becomes the Bob Dylan people remember. In November 1968, another problem emerges. Tarantula, Dylan's experimental novel, is published. Dylan wrote most of it in 1965 and 1966. He never finished it. He told his publisher, Macmillan, that he did not want it released. Macmillan releases it anyway. The contract gives them the right. The book is incomprehensible to most readers. It is stream of consciousness, surreal, unedited. Critics call it unreadable. Dylan is embarrassed. He tells a friend, I never wanted that book to come out. It's not finished, it's not good, but they own it so they can do what they want. The friend asks if Dylan can buy the rights back. Dylan, they won't sell. They want to make money off my name. The book doesn't matter. My name matters. In January 1969, Jan Wenner interviews Dylan for Rolling Stone. Wenner asks about Tarantula. Dylan, I don't think about it. It's not something I'm proud of. But it's out there now. I can't take it back. Wenner, do you wish you had more control over what gets released? Dylan, of course. But you sign contracts when you're young and you don't understand what you're giving away. By the time you understand, it's too late. The interview is revealing. Dylan is beginning to understand that his career is not entirely his own. Record labels own his recordings. Publishers own his writings. Filmmakers own their footage. Dylan can create, but he cannot control what happens to his creations after they leave his hands. In July 1969, another incident. Albert Grossman, Dylan's manager, is selling bootleg recordings to legitimate labels without Dylan's permission. The recordings are from concerts and studio sessions Dylan never intended to release. Grossman argues that he is simply monetizing material that is already circulating illegally. Dylan argues that these recordings are private. Dylan fires Grossman. The legal battle lasts years. In a deposition, Dylan says, "These recordings were never meant to be heard by the public. They were experiments. They were rehearsals. They were private moments. Mr. Grossman had no right to sell them." Grossman's attorney asks if Dylan believes he owns everything he records. Dylan, "Yes, if I record something, it's mine. Not his. Not Columbia's. Mine." But the legal reality is different. Contracts Dylan signed years earlier give Columbia Records ownership of most of his studio recordings. Grossman's management contract gives him percentages of Dylan's earnings and some decision-making power. Dylan is learning that ownership is complicated. In 1970, Dylan begins recording with Columbia again after a dispute over royalties. He records Self-Portrait, a double album of covers, live recordings, and new material. The album is deliberately odd. Dylan is testing something. He wants to see if he can release whatever he wants or if the audience expects something specific. The album is released in June 1970. The critical response is brutal. Greil Marcus begins his review in Rolling Stone with the question, "What is this shit?" Other reviews are similarly harsh. Dylan is accused of laziness, of mocking his audience, of losing his talent. Dylan does not defend the album publicly. In private, he tells friends, "I wanted to see what would happen if I released something completely unexpected. Now I know. They hated it." A friend asks if Dylan regrets it. Dylan, "No, I learned something. The audience doesn't want me to experiment. They want me to be what they think I am, but I can't do that." The self-portrait incident teaches Dylan that he cannot control how his work is received. He can make whatever he wants, but once it is released, the interpretation belongs to others. Critics will write what they write. Audiences will think what they think. Dylan cannot stop them. In 1971, A.J. Weberman begins Dylanology, the practice of going through Dylan's garbage in Greenwich Village to find clues about his life and analyzing his lyrics for hidden political meanings. Weberman publishes his findings in underground newspapers. He claims Dylan's songs contain coded messages about the Vietnam War, drug use, and revolutionary politics. Dylan is horrified. In November 1971, Dylan confronts Weberman on the street outside his Greenwich Village townhouse. The confrontation is recorded by Weberman. Dylan is angry. "Dylan, you've got no right going through my garbage." Weberman, "I'm just trying to understand your work." Dylan, "My work is the songs, not my garbage. Not my life, the songs." Weberman, "But the songs are about real things. I'm just..." Dylan interrupts. "The songs are about whatever I say they're about, not what you say they're about." The recording is later released. Dylan sounds frustrated and exhausted. He realizes that Weberman represents something larger, people who believe they own Bob Dylan's story, that they have a right to interpret his life, his work, his intentions. In response, Dylan publishes a letter in the Village Voice in January 1972. He writes, "I am not a legend. I'm not a myth. I am a person. I have a family. I have a life that is private. What I choose to share through my music is what I choose to share. Everything else is mine." The letter does not stop Weberman or others like him. The interpretation of Dylan's work has escaped his control. Academics write dissertations about his lyrics. Critics construct theories about his intentions. Fans create entire mythologies. Dylan cannot stop any of it. In 1973, Columbia Records releases Dylan, a collection of outtakes from the self-portrait and new morning sessions. Dylan did not approve the release. Columbia has contractual rights to the material. Dylan is furious. He tells a journalist, "They're putting out my garbage. I recorded that stuff and decided it wasn't good enough." Columbia decided they didn't care. They just wanted to sell something with my name on it. The journalist asks if Dylan can stop the release. Dylan: "No. I signed a contract in 1962 that gave them ownership of everything I recorded for them. I was 21 years old. I didn't know what I was signing." The album is universally panned. Critics call it the worst Dylan album ever released. Dylan does not promote it. He does not acknowledge it. In later years, he will claim he has never heard it. In 1974, Dylan begins touring again after 8 years away. Before the tour starts, there is massive press speculation about what Dylan will be like, what songs he will play, whether he can still perform. Dylan reads these articles. He realizes that the expectations are impossible. In an interview before the tour begins, Dylan says, "Everyone has their own idea of who I am. I can't be all those things. I can only be me. If that's not what people want, then they're going to be disappointed." The tour is successful, but Dylan is right. Some people are disappointed. They wanted 1966 Dylan or 1963 Dylan. They get 1974 Dylan, which is different. Dylan realizes he will never satisfy everyone. In 1975, Dylan films Ronaldo and Clara, a 4-hour experimental film about the Rolling Thunder Revue tour. Dylan co-directs with Howard Alk. The film mixes concert footage with fictional scenes. Dylan plays multiple characters, including himself. The film is intentionally confusing. Ronaldo and Clara is released in January 1978. Critics are baffled. Roger Ebert calls it self-indulgent beyond belief. Other reviews are worse. The film loses money. It is pulled from theaters after 2 weeks. In a 1978 interview with Ron Rosenbaum for Playboy, Dylan is asked about the failure of Ronaldo and Clara. Dylan: "I made the film I wanted to make. Critics didn't understand it. Audiences didn't understand it. That's fine. At least it was mine." Rosenbaum: "But don't you want people to understand your work?" Dylan: "I want people to experience my work. Understanding is secondary. Most people don't understand anything I do. They never have." Rosenbaum: "Doesn't that bother you?" Dylan: "Not anymore. I used to care. I used to try to explain. Now I realize that explanation doesn't help. People are going to interpret my work however they want. I can't control that." In 1985, the first major Dylan biography is published. Robert Shelton's No Direction Home is based on hundreds of interviews and years of research. Dylan cooperated initially, but stopped when he realized Shelton was constructing a narrative Dylan did not recognize. In a 1985 interview, Dylan is asked about the biography. Dylan: "It's Shelton's version of my life. It's not my version. Some of it's true, some of it's not. I can't control what people write about me." The interviewer asks if Dylan considered writing his own biography. Dylan: "I've thought about it. But who would believe me? Everyone already has their version of who I am. My version wouldn't match. People would just say I'm lying or I don't remember correctly." Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, more biographies are published. Clinton Halin, Howard Soons, and others write detailed accounts of Dylan's life. Most are written without Dylan's cooperation. Dylan rarely responds. When asked about them, he usually says, "I don't read that stuff." In 1997, Dylan gives an interview to David Gates for Newsweek. Gates asks how Dylan feels about having so many biographies written about him. Dylan. It's strange. These people think they know me because they've researched my life. But they don't know me. They know facts. Facts aren't a person. Gates. Have any of the biographies been accurate? Dylan. Some facts are correct. The story is always wrong. Because they don't know what I was thinking. They don't know what I was feeling. They just know what I did. Those are different things. In 2001, Love and Theft is released. Several critics notice that some of Dylan's lyrics are very similar to passages from Confessions of a Yakuza, a book by Junichi Saga. Dylan is accused of plagiarism. Dylan responds in an interview with Rolling Stone. Dylan. I'm working within a tradition. Folk music is all about borrowing and reworking. If you're going to accuse me of plagiarism, you'd have to accuse every folk singer who ever lived. The interviewer, but you didn't credit the source. Dylan. I don't credit sources. The songs stand on their own. Where the words come from doesn't matter. What matters is what I do with them. The controversy continues. Some critics defend Dylan. Some attack him. Dylan does not engage further. He realizes that once the accusation exists, it becomes part of the narrative. He cannot erase it. In 2004, Dylan publishes Chronicles, Volume 1, his first memoir. The book is carefully constructed. Dylan chooses which stories to tell. He omits large portions of his life. He contradicts some established facts. Critics notice the contradictions. In an interview with Ed Bradley for 60 Minutes, Bradley asks why Dylan's memoir contradicts other accounts of his life. Dylan, because other accounts are wrong. Or I remember things differently. Memory isn't factual. Memory is emotional. Bradley, but which version is true? Dylan, they're all true, and they're all false. Truth is complicated. The memoir is Dylan's attempt to reclaim his narrative, but even this is incomplete. Dylan announces the book is Volume 1, implying more will follow. 19 years later, Volume 2 has not appeared. Dylan has not explained why. In 2005, Martin Scorsese's documentary No Direction Home is released. Dylan cooperates with the film, giving interviews and approving footage. But Scorsese has final cut. The film focuses on Dylan's early years, ending in 1966. Scorsese constructs a narrative of artistic evolution and public rejection. Dylan watches the completed film. In a later interview, he says, Scorsese made a good film, but it's his film, not mine. He chose what to include. He chose how to tell the story. I can't complain. I agreed to do it, but it's still his version, not mine. In 2016, Dylan is awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature. The Swedish Academy praises his lyrics as poetry. Dylan does not attend the ceremony. He sends Patti Smith to perform A Hard Rain's a Gonna Fall in his place. He eventually accepts the prize but delivers his lecture via recording, not in person. In the lecture, Dylan discusses his influences and his process. He talks about folk music, about Homer, about Moby Dick. He says, our songs are alive in the land of the living, but songs are unlike literature. They're meant to be sung, not read. The statement is Dylan's subtle rejection of the Nobel Committee's interpretation. They called his lyrics poetry. Dylan insists they are songs. The distinction matters to him. Once again, others have defined his work. Once again, Dylan gently pushes back. In 2020, Dylan releases Rough and Rowdy Ways, his first album of original material in 8 years. Critics analyze the lyrics for autobiography, for political commentary, for hidden meanings. Dylan does not explain the songs. In an interview with Douglas Brinkley for the New York Times, Dylan is asked what the album is about. Dylan, it's about whatever people think it's about. I made it. They interpret it. That's how it works. Brinkley, but surely you have an intended meaning. Dylan. I have my meaning, they have theirs. Both are valid. Brinkley. Doesn't that mean you've lost control of the work? Dylan pauses. I lost control the moment I released the first album. Once something's out there, it belongs to everybody. I've made peace with that. New York City, May 1967, the 55th Street Playhouse. The credits roll on Don't Look Back. Bob Dylan stands. He walks out of the theater. Someone asks if he will do another documentary. Dylan. No, not like that. Not where someone else has final cut. The person asks what Dylan learned. Dylan. I learned you can't control how people see you. You can only control what you do. The rest is out of your hands. The street is bright. Dylan is tired. Somewhere, people are writing about him, filming him, interpreting him, analyzing him, creating versions of Bob Dylan that Bob Dylan does not recognize. He cannot stop them. He can only keep moving forward, keep making music, keep being himself even as others construct elaborate fictions about who he is. The narrative has escaped. It belongs to everyone and no one. Dylan is a character in a story he did not write. He can influence the plot. He cannot control it. That is the price of fame. That is the cost of art. You make something, release it, and watch it transform into something you never intended. Dylan understands this now. He does not like it, but he accepts it. The work continues. The myths multiply. The truth, whatever that means, remains elusive. Dylan keeps walking. The camera is gone. The audience is gone. Only the person remains. And the person, finally, is enough.